I also want to bring in our senior international correspondent, Nick Paton Walsh. Lucky for me, he's right here live in New York. Usually, I go to you in the middle of all of this. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, you were in the middle of all of this. And what I'm seeing, Nick, is that a lot of the American correspondents and foreign correspondents are having a very tough time covering this story and getting the actual story because nobody wants them there.
They are, in many ways, despised by both sides. I mean, there was the very tragic death of a British cameraman, Nick Paton, yesterday, seemingly shot at one of the demonstrations there. It's incredible to experience the animosity that the anti-Morsi crowd feel against the Western media because they think you're a manifestation of the government, which they believe, in fact, supported the Muslim Brotherhood, the Morsi presidency. There's a belief that the Obama administration, by allowing that democratic process to happen, was, in fact, putting Morsi in his place. And then, of course, there's a residual suspicion amongst the pro-Morsi demonstrators, the Muslim Brotherhood, that, of course, because America backs Israel, that somehow you're beholden to their greater enemy in the region. So there's an animosity there, certainly, and the crowds, you just can't really, until you've experienced it, you can't imagine the anger they feel towards many outsiders simply trying to document what's going on. When you see these
pictures, you certainly get a good sense of it, but listen, we tend to think that when the President of the United States stands up and does a live news conference, that every ounce of what he says, every letter of what he says is taken literally. It is overparsed, and it's also surmised that it is either for or against your side. Is it that way? Is it that simple anymore? Do these people give a hoot anymore what the president has to say?
It's wildly misinterpreted. I mean, I remember a crowd surrounding us in Cairo, and it was pretty dicey. Some people were trying to get us out, and one of the guys arguing English for us to be released, as we walked away, started shouting at me, saying, "We hate Obama's policy on this." And I'm trying to imagine exactly what there was possibly. Yeah. All of it. I mean, you see the speech today, you see the cutting of this military exercise. That's really not going to have any sharp intake of breath amongst Egypt's generals. They've seen a diplomatic process potentially pushed through by William Burns that failed. They've seen high-ranking senators come, and now 500 people have been killed, mostly by security forces, and the best that Washington's prepared to do is slow down on military exercises.
And this may not come off as sounding very sympathetic, and I'm sorry if it does, but I think a lot of Americans look at the Muslim Brotherhood and think before all of this began in Egypt, it was the Muslim Brotherhood calling for the death of Americans. In great part, not everyone, of course, but in great part, they were seen as antagonizers. They were seen as haters of America, as haters of American way. And now it's the Muslim Brotherhood, effectively, if what I'm getting from you is accurate, saying, why aren't you helping us more, America?
To a degree, I mean, Islamism exists in the region, and the Muslim Brotherhood is a more moderate manifestation of that. So, I mean, if there are any people you wanted to encourage to be part of the political process, it would be them inside Egypt. And I think the fear is across the region now. You see this happen, the marginalisation of them in Egyptian politics and society, a civil war happening on sort of similar grounds in Syria and Iraq too.
I was just going to say in Syria as well, it's the same argument. People who called for our heads on stakes suddenly saying, help us from our oppressive government.
That's the contradiction of this entire region.
I know you have a lot more work to do, and so we're going to tap into you as much as we can on this story, and let's hope we're not going to be covering too much bloodshed as this moves forward. Nick, it's good to see you again in New York. Thank you. And thank you for all the work you do in the field as well. These guys really risk their lives to bring this story.